Hey y'all, and welcome to Carbon Scoring, where comic book history and action figures collide. Today we're going to take a deep dive into Frank Miller's original run on Daredevil. We're going to go through the history of the run, the figures that have been produced based off of it, and then reveal card art for the series of figures we still need. This book was as good as graphic storytelling gets, so grab your billy club and away we go. Daredevil is the story of blind lawyer Matt Murdock, who lost his vision in a childhood accident, but which enhanced his remaining senses, including a radar sense, allowing him to see the world around him. Fighting for justice in the courtrooms by day and in the streets of Hell's Kitchen by night, DD premiered in his own title in April of 1964, wearing a costume that could only have been designed by a blind man. You have to remember that because of Marvel's distribution deal with the Distinguished Competition, they could only publish 16 titles a month, so every book needed to be a hit for the fledgling company to survive. So featured prominently on the cover to that first issue are Marvel's two biggest stars, Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four. Stan Lee was basically trying to give Daredevil the time slot between Friends and Seinfeld. Yeah, I said it. Daredevil is the Suddenly Susan of the Marvel Universe. It worked about as well, too. Daredevil floundered as a bi-monthly until veteran artist Wally Wood came on board with issue 5. He changed Daredevil's costume to the now iconic red tights with the interlocking DD logo in issue 7. Legend has it that Wood didn't let his writer-editor Stan Lee know of the costume change, simply handing in the finished art. As DD was appearing in another title that same month, this led to a mad dash to do art corrections on that other title to adjust to the new costume before print. But it wouldn't last. While Wood's art and creativity got the book on track, before long, it was back to bi-monthly and being one of the dregs of the Marvel line. The title was on the verge of cancellation in May of 1979 when Marvel handed the artistic reins to virtual unknown Frank Miller. Less than 2 years after his first published work, Miller was being lauded as a bombshell on the opening splash page. Honestly, I think this was more Mary Marvel hyperbole than true clairvoyance into what was to come. Miller's initial run on the title lasted 33 issues, but he was providing only art for the first 9 issues, all of one of which were written by Roger McKenzie. McKenzie also wrote issue 183, which was originally slated to be issue 169, but that plan obviously changed when Miller took over the writing duties full-time with 168. Most of these issues were more-to-the-month type books that caused Daredevil to be such a weak title in the first place, pitting Matt against the likes of Deathstalker, Gladiator, and the Mauler. Claus Janson took over the art chores for 6 issues, beginning with issue 185. And I imagine there were readers at that time who didn't notice, as their styles had perfectly blended by that point. So that leaves 18 issues written and penciled by Frank Miller. Together, they tell one continuous crime noir story, with ninjas, that revolves around 5 main characters: Daredevil, Elektra, Bullseye, Kingpin, and the 5th character, New York City itself. This graphic shows issues featuring Elektra in red, Bullseye in blue, and the Kingpin in purple. You can clearly see how these storylines were intertwined throughout the run. Miller paints the city through his art and writing as a seedy, dirty town filled with bars and back alleys, a fairly accurate portrayal of life in the early 80s. Much has been written about Miller's experience of being mugged several times as influencing his portrayal of New York, and certainly there's merit to that. It's an easy narrative, but I think it oversimplifies his relationship with the city. Miller arrived in New York as a 19-year-old in 1976, carrying a portfolio of poorly drawn crime noir stories bound together with balling twine from the dairy farm where he worked in Vermont. He was rejected repeatedly, scrounging for art assignments anywhere he could. He was quoted in a Comics Journal interview from 1981 saying, quote, "I went days without food, the whole down-and-out New York scene, existing without a place to live. There were months of near starvation." So Miller's experience with New York City was shaped from the streets, literally from the ground up. It's no wonder that his stories reflect this. Artistically, Miller was heavily influenced by Will Eisner's comic The Spirit, as seen in both men's heavy use of blacks and shading to portray the dingier parts of city life. Miller also borrowed Eisner's innovative use of text and lettering as graphic elements to enhance the story. This can be seen in the creator credits on the splash page to issue 270. Interestingly, Miller's knowledge of the hidden, off-limits, rough parts of New York City is evident here as Daredevil is going for a run on the abandoned, elevated West Side train line, then a bastion of drug dealers and the homeless, that has now been gentrified into one of Manhattan's biggest tourist attractions, the High Line. From a writing standpoint, Miller began with the typical wordy type of a novice author, filled with overcooked expressions and thought balloons. But as his experience grew, his storytelling advanced, allowing his expert shadows and pacing to lead the way. Less was more, and this was never more obvious than at the climax of the series, where virtually the only words during a fight that spread over multiple pages were Bullseye's haunting, "Now for my next trick." If y'all are interested in a deep dive solely looking at this comic run, leave me a note in the comments. Otherwise, let's take a look at the action figures we've gotten from this incredible comic run, starting with the title character, Daredevil. Oh, Daredevil, I know your comic started rough, but you didn't catch a break when it came to action figures either. As one of Marvel's key characters, DD first appeared in 6-inch scale in the second lineup of Spider-Man Classics. This precursor line to Marvel Legends had old Hornhead on the same body as Spidey, but the flat colors really exposed the weakness of this sculpt. That said, I always thought this head sculpt resembled Joe Quesada's artwork from his run with Kevin Smith. That Marvel Knights imprint helped lead Marvel out of bankruptcy and led to the media juggernaut that it is today. Toy Biz tried to fix things in 2003, but at that time they were obviously getting a 2-for-1 deal on paint wash applications, and so this figure, instead of coming out gritty, just looks grimy. 3 years later, they were so close to a perfect Daredevil, but those shoulders made him look like he had been swimming butterfly for 24 hours a day. When Hasbro took over the line, they took a couple more shots at perfecting a Daredevil figure. I've always been partial to that 2009 figure from the Nemesis wave because I thought it had the proper gymnast frame, but in making this video and playing with that most recent figure from 2015, there may be a new leader in the clubhouse. Elektra was clearly a priority character as well, first appearing in 2003's fourth lineup of Marvel Legends. She came back 5 years later in a 2-pack with Ronin. Interestingly, both of these figures had variants, the White Resurrection Elektra and the Skrull Elektra from the Secret Invasion storyline. But we can all go home happy, because the most recent Elektra from Marvel Legends is plastic perfection. While Frank Miller's stylized artwork is more difficult to replicate in action figure form, this takes all the proper notes to craft an excellent rendition. Bullseye first appeared in Toy Biz's seminal Galactus wave from 2005. He has an ugly regular version and a really ugly variant. But much like Elektra, Hasbro crushed it with their Marvel Legends Bullseye. The expression on his face managed to capture the maniacal delight of the character. The Kingpin had a bit of a rougher path to perfection. Toy Biz gave us this caricature of a figure in the Spider-Man animated series line, but then did a really nice job of pairing Kingpin with Daredevil in the Face-Off 2-pack from 2006. But Kingpin recently entered the Action Figure Hall of Fame with this stunning rendition. Come on, man, he has a pinky ring and a cane with a diamond-encrusted top. So we've been pretty lucky. We've gotten excellent renditions of major characters from one of the greatest storylines in the history of Marvel Comics. We should just probably take the W and go home, right? Nah, come on, we're action figure collectors. We always want more, and I'm here to give it to you. These are the 6 unproduced figures we still need from Frank Miller's original run on Daredevil. We're going to start from the ground up with 2 men who Matt Murdock would consider his best friends, starting with his college roommate and law partner Foggy Nelson. Foggy has been with Matt from the very beginning. He's been everything from a damsel in distress to a blundering buffoon to the voice of reason and sanity in the back of Daredevil's mind. I'd pair him with Ben Urich, the crack reporter from the Daily Bugle, who not only brought down the Kingpin with the power of his typewriter, but also discovered Daredevil's secret identity through his investigative skills. Next up, we have a couple of dudes who ended up on the wrong side of the good guy, bad guy line. Melvin Potter was the gladiator, a mentally unhinged man believing he was a Roman warrior. He was the typical DD foil, until Miller gave him more dimension and made him a sympathetic character and a mainstay in the Daredevil universe. Turk Barrett may be my favorite character in Miller's run. A down-on-his-luck, small-time hood, constantly getting in over his head with one harebrained scheme after another, and just as constantly providing Daredevil with inside information. We have plenty of bullies. We need more stoolies on our action figure shelves. And finally, a couple of Daredevil's most vital allies. Stick was the mysterious ninja master who trained Murdock as a child, allowing him to harness his special abilities and molding him in his fight for justice. Black Widow has been made many times as an action figure, but I'm still looking for the perfect version from Frank Miller's run. Together, these 6 figures would complete our Miller Daredevil shelves. So there you have it, a retrospective on the action figures that we have and the ones that we still need from Frank Miller's seminal first Daredevil run. If you're picking up what we're putting down, hit like, hit subscribe, help us grow the channel, and check out some of our other videos. Until the next time, we'll see you at Carbon Scoring.